InvestorIdeas.com podcasts.
Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of InvestorIdeas.com podcasts. In today's podcast, going to be looking at a few public and private company announcements from Dynalio, Canada's highest capacity manufacturer of premium cannabis-infused soft chews. Also looking at the Flower Corporation, trading on the TSX Venture as FLWR and the OTC as FLWPF, as well as Tikkum Olam Cannabis, trading on the Tel Aviv Exchange as TKUN, as well as Jazz Pharmaceuticals, trading on the Nasdaq as Jazz, and GW Pharmaceuticals, trading on the Nasdaq as GWPH. And lastly, we're looking at a little bit of commentary from Jason Wilson, the cannabis and banking expert at ETF Managers Group, trading on the the New York Stock Exchange as MJ. So first, looking at Dynalio, who announced the launch of two brands, Sunshower and Dynathrive CBD. The two new brands are available in authorized retail locations and online channels in BC and Saskatchewan, with plans to expand to Alberta, Ontario, and additional regions in the near future. Now, Sunshower will launch with three delicious flavors: watermelon, lemonade, mango tangerine, and wild strawberry, and each pack containing 5 pieces of 10 milligram total THC. Sunshower is aimed at adults looking for an enjoyable and consistent THC experience with finest flavors and ingredients. And inventory in Saskatchewan, the first province to place orders, has already sold out the 2 shipments in its first month. Now, Dynathrive CBD is Canada's first and only large format CBD soft chew. The first flavor, apple cider vinegar, is made with purified CBD isolate and Canadian apple juice and real apple cider vinegar to deliver a sweetly refreshing tart taste. And the first Dynathrive CBD format contains 30 pieces, perfect for daily supplements, with 300 milligrams total CBD, and is aimed at the growing segment of wellness consumers who are seeking a more enjoyable and convenient way to take CBD. The company has also formulated several additional flavors and unique product formats for launch later in 2021 to complement these additional offerings. Now, we continue to see accelerating demand in the edibles market for high-quality recreational and wellness cannabis products, especially from those who want to experience cannabis without needing to inhale. And at the same time, consumers and retailers are experiencing inconsistent supply, both in terms of quantity and quality. And as Canada's highest capacity soft chew manufacturer, we are in a unique position to have our products available at all times to consistently meet consumer demand with a best-in-class experience, says Dynalio Executive Chairman Michael Crestel. Now, Crestel continued, in terms of the wellness consumer, countless customers have made it clear that they want CBD but without intoxicating effects of THC, and the 2 or 5 piece CBD offerings in the market today do not match up well for customers looking to take CBD on a daily basis or even throughout the day. Now, the Dynathrive CBD 30-piece pack is the perfect solution for them. So Dynalio, I've talked a lot about over the last couple of months. They're a company that there's a lot of expectation around within the Canadian market with their high capacity manufacturing facility. It is going to be interesting to see how much they can sort of dominate within the edibles market. So far, haven't brought up too many products into the market, but I do think it's smart right away that they're focusing on high production CBD capacities. You're seeing right now that there is still a large gap in the CBD market within the Canadian edible space, and I do think that there is a demand for not only larger dose formats, but also larger packaging formats, so people who are taking CBD throughout their day, especially just for anti-inflammation effects, can now have access to these types of products. I think those will sell out pretty aggressively, and I'm sure you'll see a few other companies sort of follow suit afterwards, where you'll see similar types of products and formats available onto the market. And really, this is something that should have been done, maybe about a year and a half ago, realistically, when you saw how underserved the CBD section of the Canadian market was. A lot of companies just did not have the time or the energy to devote towards CBD products, as again, they were making more profit off of their THC-infused edibles, and that is where they see a lot more potential within the recreational market. But now you're starting to see, again, the Canadian consumer push more towards health and wellness products and towards really more, not moving away from THC, because they're still seeing THC products sell quite aggressively. But now people are starting to realize the benefits of CBD as well and want to have sort of both options available. So I do think that hopefully you'll see through the launch of this Dynathrive CBD product that a few other companies follow behind them, and it'll also be, again, something to pay attention to over the next coming months of how many products Dynalio can get to the market, where they're able to launch in which provinces, and what the overall feedback is, as they're a company that, at least as far as their manufacturing capacity, can be pretty aggressive within the edible space. But as we've seen, it's pretty hard for brand launching within the Canadian market so far. Next, looking at the Flower Corporation, who provided commentary on the decision by Infarmed, Portugal's National Authority of Medicines and Health Products, to approve the first market authorization, which will allow a licensed producer of medical cannabis to release products in Portugal. We applaud the decision by Infarmed, which is the first of its kind to allow patients to have access to medical cannabis products in Portugal through indication-specific market authorizations. Now, the Portuguese government is forward-thinking in its approach to improving the quality of life for Portuguese patients as scientific data continues to mount regarding medical cannabis as both safe and efficacious in treating a variety of conditions, commented Boris Duffy, Flower's Managing Director of Europe. Now, this groundbreaking decision sets the stage for Flower to pursue market authorizations to serve Portuguese and European patients with medical cannabis produced from our world-class local facilities in Sintra and Aljustrel, commented Leis Emanuel, President and Interim CEO of Flower. Now, in March 2020, Flower announced that its wholly owned subsidiary in Europe, Hologen Holdings Limited, received its Good Manufacturing Practice certification in accordance with European Union standards for its indoor manufacturing facility located in Sintra, Portugal, and the GMP certification was issued by Infarmed, and Hologen is in the process of conducting stability testing on certain of its high THC genetics and expects results within 2021. Now located just outside of Lisbon, Hologen's Sintra facility is a purpose-built facility with 6 grow rooms, a research and development lab, and an expected extraction processing facility. And the Sintra facility is capable of producing approximately 2,000 kilograms of premium dried flower when fully optimized. And Hologen's European operations also include the Aljustrel facility, which has more than 5 million square feet of outdoor grow space and a greenhouse capacity capable of producing in excess of 500,000 kilograms of cannabis when fully operational. So definitely a big step for Portugal, and I'm sure it will be a big moment for the Flower Corporation, at least with regards to their Hologen Holdings Limited. Something to pay attention to now will be how much that market grows over the next year or so, and how many sort of opportunities they're going to have for import and export out of Portugal into other EU marketplaces. At least for any Canadian-based producer, having that in-step in Portugal is going to be pretty essential for their supply line into the European markets. And again, having a large outdoor grow facility in Portugal as well would be quite a boon for them moving forward. So another marketplace to pay attention to, and this kind of goes in line with what I was talking about over the last couple of months, which is that in this next year you can expect to see a lot of regulatory changes both in EU marketplaces, in Latin America, in parts of Africa, and again in the States. It's going to be a pretty aggressive year when it comes to cannabis legislation reform, and you're already starting to see this in small areas, and now you're going to probably see it's to continue to build momentum as the year goes on. And some of the companies who have obviously done the due diligence early on to be able to enter into those early markets when they're initially launching, like Flower Corporation in Portugal right now, are going to have quite an aggressive foothold when it comes to the overall global market and import-export market once that opens up even more. Next, looking at Tikkun Olam Canbit, trading on the Toronto Stock Exchange as the Tel Aviv Exchange as TKUN, who reported that its international arm Canbit Limited will be the exclusive supplier of medical cannabis for clinical research and treatment of opioid addiction. Now, the company will be entitled to exclusive marketing of the treatment method in Israel, Germany, and England. And the study will be done using a patent for the addiction treatment method that is currently undergoing registration by JFM Technology Holdings, for which Opioid Stop has received an exclusive unlimited license under the U.S. FDA's Fast Track. Now, the U.S. company Opioid Stop will provide all the financing, the submission of the patent, and the follow-up submissions, and will be responsible for the performance and financing of the clinical trials in the U.S., and will see to getting all the licenses for importing into the United States. And the treatment method may affect the market of opioid sales in the U.S., which is estimated at around $20 billion per year. Now, after his daughter died as a result of opioid addiction and his son also became addicted to analgesics, Jonah Rosenblatt, the founder of Opioid Stop, developed a special 3-stage method for withdrawal from opioids. And the stages include, among other things, using approved drugs, synthetic and semi-synthetic opioids combined with treatment using medical cannabis. Now, Rosenblatt has already filed a patent for the method, and the company is now working on raising capital and starting clinical trials in the U.S. with the intent of conducting clinical trials, submitting an approval and treatment through the FDA's Fast Track. Now, Avikan Sapper, the CEO of Ticum Ollum Cannabis, states, Rosenblatt's opioid method of treatment is on the FDA Fast Track for approval in order to solve the problem of severe addiction to opioids that has been sweeping through the U.S. in recent years. Every 17 minutes, someone dies in the U.S. of an analgesic overdose, and Ticum Ollum Cannabis is happy to be part of the possible solution to this severe plague of analgesic addiction, a problem that can be identified here in Israel too. Now, Jonah Rosenblatt, the CEO of OpiaStop, states, over 70,000 Americans and 500,000 people worldwide die each year of the opioid epidemic, and this is ripping apart the fabric of society. We believe that combining a multi-module approach to curating addiction with cannabinoid-based medications and formulations, as the clinical research of medical cannabis has been shown to reduce opioid dependency, and by coming together in this joint venture, together we are extremely confident in our combined effort to reach our goal of giving people back their free will. So obviously there's been a lot of talk for quite some time about cannabis use when it comes to treating opioid addiction. CBD specifically has been one that's been put forward many times, and then as well just medical cannabis in general. You have seen a lot of studies, you have seen a lot of effective results in the past, but you haven't seen a lot of large-scale studies like this, and especially not something that's been approved through the FDA. I do think that this is going to be potentially a very, very large impact to both cannabis and to the opioid industry if you can have successful results, and if you can get them, if this can get fast-tracked through the FDA as quickly as this company is definitely hoping. That'll be a huge, huge benefit for Ticum Ollum Cannabis, obviously, but also for OpiaStop. And obviously having the markets that they're aiming for right away, Israel, Germany, and England, as well as into the U.S., is going to be pretty aggressive. I do think that there's a lot of potential for medical cannabis when it comes to opiate addiction. I do think that there's always going to be difficulties, though, when it comes to consistency of the product. That has been the biggest difficulty so far when it's come to combating opiates via cannabis. Has been cost of production has been quite high in the past, but now you're starting to see that drop more and more significantly every year. And then as well, the efficacy of the products. So again, lighter dose CBD products and even lighter dose THC and products that have been going out to the market don't always get the fast enough effects that you're looking for. So they have been looking at different dosage methods. And also, again, another thing has been the bioavailability. So in the past, a lot of these edible products that were going out onto the market were not as effective and as controlled as some of the products that you're seeing on the market today. So hopefully that will be taken into account as well, where they'll be looking at more next generation cannabis products as opposed to simply dried flower. And hopefully, again, you will see some good results from this, because when you go to most conferences, whether it's about medical or recreational cannabis, this is one of the most discussed topics within the cannabis industry, is the benefit of using medical cannabis towards treating addiction, specifically for opioids. There's also been a lot of talk about helping with addiction to alcohol. That's something that definitely the beverage market is slowly addressing. When you look at products, for instance, like from Seth Rogen's brand Houseplant, whose beverages have done quite well, you've actually seen a lot of reports which you can check out online, where they talk about how many people have dropped their drinking habits either by half or by 90% by switching to cannabis-infused beverages, especially light dose or CBD-infused beverages, where they're not having any of the psychoactive effects really, and are just having a nice soothing bedtime drink. So a lot of potential here, and again, if this does get pushed through the FDA, that's going to be a huge, huge change for cannabis legislation globally. Again, I've already talked about that there's already a lot of things in the mix so far, but I do think that if you get an opiate addiction treatment that's approved in the U.S., England, and Israel, as well as Germany, you're going to see some pretty fast-track global changes when it comes to medical cannabis and cannabis legislation, which is already, again, in the works. And lastly, today we're looking at Jazz Pharmaceuticals and GW Pharmaceuticals, who announced that the companies have entered into a definitive agreement for Jazz to acquire GW for $220 per American depository share in the form of $200 in cash and $20 in Jazz ordinary shares for a total consideration of $7.2 billion or $6.7 billion net of GW cash. Now, GW is a global leader in discovering, developing, manufacturing, commercializing novel, regulatory-approved therapeutics from its proprietary cannabinoid product platform to address a broad range of diseases. Now, the company's lead product, Epidiolex oral solution, is approved in patients 1 year and older for the treatment of seizures associated with Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, or LGS, Dravet syndrome, and TSC, all of which are rare diseases characterized by severe early onset epilepsy. Now, Epidiolex was the first plant-derived cannabinoid medicine ever approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, and this product has also been approved under the trademark Epidiolex by the European Medicines Agency in patients 2 years of age and older for the adjunctive treatment of seizures associated with LGS and Dravet syndrome in conjunction with clobazam, and is under EMA review for the treatment of seizures associated with TSC. In addition, the approved indications of Epidiolex, there are considerable opportunities to pursue other indications with epilepsy field, including the treatment of resistant epilepsy, where significant unmet needs of patients exist. Now, beyond Epidiolex, GW has a scientific platform, a deep innovative pipeline of cannabinoid products and candidates, as well as highly specialized manufacturing expertise developed over 2 decades of pioneering and building leadership in cannabinoid science. Jazz is proud of our leadership position in sleep medicines and rapidly growing oncology business. We're excited to add GW's industry-leading cannabinoid platform, innovative pipeline, and products, which will strengthen and broaden our neuroscience portfolio, further diversify our revenue, and drive sustainability, long-term value creation opportunities, said Bruce Kazad, Chairman and CEO of Jazz Pharmaceuticals. We are joining 2 teams that share a passion for, a track record of, developing differentiated therapies that advance science and transform the lives of patients. This will help facilitate a successful integration and bring added capabilities to Jazz. And given the strength of our balance sheet and the meaningful financial drivers of this transaction, we are confident that the value we can deliver to both companies, shareholders, and patients. We look forward to welcoming the GW team to Jazz to build an ever stronger company. So obviously GW traded up about 50% on the news today, and there's a lot of hype and expectations surrounding this. So lastly today, I'm going to look at comments from Jason Wilson, who is the cannabis and banking expert at the ETF Managers Group, trading on the New York Stock Exchange as MJ, one of the largest cannabis ETFs, who commented on this recent acquisition as well as recent trends in the cannabis space, saying that Jazz Pharma's acquisition of GW Pharma at a significant premium demonstrates that pharmaceutical companies are recognizing the value and future potential of cannabinoid-based medicines. It's also another example that the cannabis industry is continuing to normalize and evolve beyond the traditional cultivation of flower, with potential well outside of our borders. Now, for investors, the acquisition of GW Pharma is another reminder that investing in cannabis touches many verticals globally, requiring a diverse approach beyond traditional cannabis cultivation companies. Now, Mr. Wilson continued to discuss some of the other factors beyond the recent rally in cannabis stocks, such as domestically with Senate Majority Leader Schumer, who has confirmed that cannabis reform legislation will be a key priority in the current Congress, and that it will include sensible tax and regulatory oversight at the federal level, along with criminal justice reform. Globally, Mexico recently published its federal medical cannabis regulations, and the UN voted to remove medical cannabis from its list of dangerous narcotics. Now, these recent catalysts occurred on the backdrop of a strong global cannabis sales growth in 2020. 2020 global sales are expected to reach approximately $20 billion, an increase of approximately 35% versus 2019 sales of $15 billion, and suggests that the industry will continue to see strong growth and continued expansion domestically and globally for the foreseeable future. Now, MJ's diversified cannabis portfolio has benefited from these recent global and domestic catalysts, up 90% plus in the previous 3 months and 40% year to date, and remains well positioned to take advantage of what is expected to be one of the fastest growing global industries over the next decade. So again, a lot of what Jason Wilson there is commenting on, sort of reiterating a lot of the things I've been saying over the last couple of months. Again, where you're looking at really some aggressive growth over the next couple of years. I would not really expect that to slow down anytime soon. I think that most of the bumps and hurdles you've seen for the cannabis industry have already kind of been through. And really now what you're going to see is, again, a lot of quick legislative reform in areas that are still hesitant about this industry. Again, when you're looking at any state that's come on board with a medical or recreational program in the last year or so, it's been quite insane how fast they've implemented their cannabis legislation, and quite insane as well how fast they've gotten product to customers. and really built out the infrastructure in a very short amount of time. And that's because, again, more and more of these, whether you're looking at it on a global scale or a localized scale, everyone is now paying attention to past regulations, past legislation, past faux pas that the industry has made when it comes to launching a medical or recreational program. And now you're starting to see a much faster turnaround when it comes to newer markets being opened up. And I think that a lot of people are seeing this, especially over the last year where so many countries and economies have been decimated from COVID, that this is a huge possible turnaround use of building out the cannabis industry, creating jobs, creating localized economies that are a little bit more sustainable. And I do think that it's on a pretty big and aggressive steamroll train uphill right now, and I think that you're going to see, again, already, we're only into February, and you've seen some legislative change and some pretty aggressive moves. There's a lot of talk already about federal legalization in the U.S. Lots of companies that are making pretty aggressive moves in anticipation of that within the next year or so, and I do think that once that happens, this global industry is going to sort of evolve pretty quickly in a very short amount of time. That's all for today's podcast. Enjoy the rest of your day. That's all for today's podcast. Podcast is now a certified word trademark on the blockchain through Cognate Incorporated CM certification. InvestorIdeas.com podcasts are also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and TuneIn. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor of this podcast, please contact InvestorIdeas.com. Investor Ideas reminds all listeners to read our disclaimers and disclosures on the InvestorIdeas.com website, and this podcast is not an endorsement to buy products or services or securities. Investors are reminded that all investments involve risk and possible loss of investment. Investor Ideas does not condone the use of cannabis except where permissible by law. Our site does not possess, distribute, or sell cannabis products.